You're listening to a channel where real crimes sound more chilling than fiction. No screams or cheap theatrics here. Just facts, details, and an atmosphere that cuts to the bone. So, get comfortable and don't forget to subscribe because there's more strange, mysterious, and damn convoluted stories ahead. If you're hooked, hit that like button. It helps the channel grow and lets me dig even deeper. Now, let's dive into the darkness. Part 1. The door that shouldn't have opened. Scotland, a land where centuries hide between fjords and ancient stone bridges, where stories linger not in books, but in the air, where every house is a page from a past that doesn't always want to be forgotten. In November, when the day fades faster than tea cools in a cup, even the simplest things take on a supernatural hue. Sunday, November 28th, 2004. Nairn, a small coastal town in northern Scotland. A tourist paradise in warmer months, but in autumn, it's almost another planet. Half-empty streets, cold beaches, damp winds, and gray clouds pressing down on rooftops like a heavy blanket on a chest. By 7 p.m., most locals are already home, in robes, with a glass of whiskey or a cup of tea, surrounded by familiar walls, old photos, and cats that can scare you with their silence. At this hour, no one expects visitors. A knock on the door after 7 is either a neighbor who lost their keys or something far less pleasant. Rosslyn Villa, number 10, on Nunn Street. White, well-kept, unremarkable. If Google Street View existed in 2004, you'd pass by without noticing anything odd. But behind those doors, under the glow of an old hallway lamp, something will happen in 2 minutes that will erase one life, shatter several others, and create a mystery that will torment police, journalists, and loved ones for decades. Silence. Then, a faint ding of the doorbell. When the bell rang, Jo Wilson, Alistair's wife, was putting their 2 children to bed. It was an ordinary Sunday, their usual routine. Alistair was home. They weren't expecting guests. No meetings planned. No enemies. But the man at the door didn't quite look like a courier, and definitely not like a friend. He asked for Alistair. Simply, "Is Alistair Wilson here?" No emotion, no panic. And when Alistair came to the door, something in him seemed to click. He didn't step out right away. First, he spoke to Jo, then went back to the door. Moments later, she heard 3 shots. 3 muffled gunshots. Then, perfect silence. The story you're about to hear isn't just an investigation. It's a plunge into a reality where every puzzle piece has its shape, but none fit together. Fragments of a mirror that show no reflection. A case that should have been simple, but turned into a fog where everyone who touched its details still wanders. Who was at the door? Why did they come? Why was Alistair Wilson, father, banker, private man with no dark past, killed? And why, nearly 20 years later, does this murder remain unanswered? Part 2. The murder that shouldn't have been. Nairn, Sunday evening, November 28th, 2004. This evening was supposed to be about calm, about coziness, about ordinary family, nothing special. At 7 p.m., there were no screams in the Wilson house. No arguments. Just the soft light in the children's room, dimmed like Jo's voice as she read bedtime stories to their 2 boys, so young the world beyond home felt like a fairy tale. They lay under blankets, staring at the ceiling, their parents' voices their lighthouse. In the kitchen, a kettle, its plaintive hiss. In the living room, a TV left on, unwatched, its sound a familiar, soothing backdrop. In the hallway, silence, the kind you dread recalling later. The silence something will shatter, once and for all. Doorbell. A single, dull chime, like a shot into the future. Jo set down the book. Glancing out the window, she saw a man standing at the door. A man, ordinary, not old, maybe 35 to 40. Jeans, dark jacket. Face, nothing special, like it was stitched from the average stranger's image. He asked, "Is Alistair Wilson here?" No aggression. Calmly, like someone asking about a work debt. But that was already a signal. People don't show up at private homes in Scottish coastal towns unannounced at night. Alistair heard his wife's voice, came downstairs, glanced into the hallway, then stepped back. They spoke briefly, intently. That's when the ordinary evening began to crack, not yet broken. Creak of the door opening again. And here's where it gets bizarre. Alistair went back to the door, but first turned to his wife and said, "What's a Patterson? Patterson mean anything to you?" No, Joe didn't know. The name meant nothing to them. She remembered it clearly because she wondered why he'd ask about some Patterson. Not a friend, not a colleague, not a neighbor. And then he went outside to meet the man. No phone, no weapon, no sense of danger. And within seconds, something happened that never should have. 3 sharp shots. Not to the chest, to the head. Professional. Real. Alistair fell at the threshold. Not on the street. Not on the steps. At the threshold of his own home. His children meters away. His wife, who hadn't yet grasped that her life ended in that moment, even if her body still breathed. Silence. Then, heavy breathing, like someone choking in the quiet. Joe ran out. Screamed. Neighbors heard. Someone called the police. Medics arrived. Alistair was still alive, but it was already life in the process of vanishing. They rushed him to the hospital. A few minutes of struggle, and gone. The end of not just a life, but of logic. Details that don't add up. No motive. No witnesses who saw the killer's face. No enemies. No security footage. Alistair wasn't in debt. Had no criminal past. No shady dealings. And one more thing. A blue card found, left either by the killer or Alistair himself, with the name Patterson handwritten. A name that leads nowhere. Like a stamp from another era, a letter delivered to the wrong address. Part 3. Patterson, the bank, and the void. It all feels so very Scottish. Nairn, a small coastal town, practically made for postcards. But something tore through this postcard. At its heart, Alistair Wilson. Who was he? A man without scandals, without crime, but not quite a nobody. Business portrait, Wilson the banker. Until 2001, Alistair worked at Highland Bank, operating in northern Scotland. His role, branch manager, mid-level. Not a CEO, not a small fish. A link who might have known a bit more than was safe. But in 2001, Highland Bank was acquired by Clydesdale Bank, and Alistair faced a crossroads. He was offered a transfer, and he refused. By 2003, he left banking entirely. No new bank job, no startup. He evaporated from the business world. Stayed home, wrote, worked with documents, but what exactly? No official employment. Mystery 1. Why does a man with a solid position in a stable industry vanish from it? And why, a year before his death, does he start preparing to return to banking? It's as if he stepped out for a break and never came back. Until a certain moment. Politics and concrete. Alistair was a member of the Scottish Liberal Democrats, not just a cardholder. In 2003 to 2004, he became active in debates over local development. At the center, one project, the Havelock House Hotel, right across from his home. The owners wanted to add a terrace, expand the premises, turn it into a louder, more touristy spot. Noise, music, drunken visitors under his windows. And Alistair opposed it. Actively, persistently. Through the party, through the town. The town council received a letter signed by him, protesting the development permit. A week later, he was killed. Patterson, a name from nowhere. On the steps, after the murder, a card was found. A small blue card. Handwritten on it, Patterson. No number. No explanation. Alistair himself had asked, "What's a Patterson?" Neither he nor his wife knew anyone by that name. No relative. No acquaintance. And pay attention. No banking or political case the police investigated included the name Patterson. Was it the killer's name? A code? A pseudonym? Or perhaps someone Alistair was meant to meet or owed? Professional hit? 3 shots, all to the head. The firearm gone. No traces at the scene. No neighbor could describe the killer clearly. Police suspect it could be a hired hit. If so, the question is, for what? This doesn't look like revenge. Not a robbery. Not a deranged individual. This was an execution. And if it was an order, then either. 1. Politics, development, pressure on business. 2. An old banking matter, money laundering, leaking info. 3. Something entirely invisible and personal. Leads that go nowhere. Police checked every Patterson within a 50 kilometers radius. None were connected. None linked to Wilson. The card standard, printed at a press. The batch number, inactive. It feels like the name was written deliberately to lead to a dead end. The void after death. After the murder. No further threats to Joe Wilson. No new hotel development happened. The case wasn't closed. No suspects. It's as if someone erased a person, making sure everyone knew answers wouldn't come. Part 4. A hole in time. That evening started ordinarily. The Wilson family, Alistair, his wife Jo, and their 2 young sons spent their Sunday evening like Minnie and Nairn. Their house on Knoll Street, 2 stories, Seaview. Across the street, the Havelock House Hotel, the noisy heart of their micro-universe. The night of November 28, 2004. Alistair Wilson's last evening. It began with a doorbell. 7 p.m. Joe opens the door. At the threshold, a stranger. Dark clothing. Baseball cap. Not aggressive. Not drunk. Not strange. Just asks, "Is Alistair Wilson home?" Joe, slightly surprised, says, "Yes." One moment. Goes upstairs to her husband. Relays the request. Alistair seems unsettled. He goes downstairs. To the door. Steps out for a few minutes. Then returns. In his hands, a small blue envelope. No stamps, logos, or seals. Just an envelope. Inside, nothing. Empty. But on it, a handwritten name, Patterson. 7:05 p.m. Alistair looks confused. Sits. Reads. Rereads. Says to his wife, "What's Patterson?" He doesn't understand. Neither does she. And then a second doorbell. Wilson gets up, goes downstairs, and he doesn't come back. Joe hears 3 muffled sounds. Not like gunshots. More like fists hitting wood. She runs to the door. Alistair lies on the floor in the doorway. Blood. A wound on his face. Eyes open. And no one on the street. Just the night. And the hotel across the way. The faceless killer. Police never found a reliable description of the killer. Weapon unknown. Likely a small caliber pistol with a suppressor. Shells gone. No signs of a struggle. No movement caught on street cameras. It's as if the killer evaporated right after the shots. Joe Wilson, the main witness. Joe is the only one who saw the killer, but her description was so vague it couldn't produce a sketch. Height, about 175 centimeters. Age, 30 to 40. Clothing, dark jacket, baseball cap. Behavior calm, unhurried. And crucially, he didn't try to hide his face. Yet it somehow faded from memory. Police believe he knew she wouldn't recall anything. Shock, darkness, panic, and maybe the killer had been in the house before. The Patterson envelope. This object becomes the central mystery. Police checked hundreds of cards, fonts, printers. No one recognized the handwriting. No one understood the context. The name Patterson appears nowhere. No debts, no letters, no cases. Just a word. Just a name. Like a password to something invisible. Police theories. 1. Political conflict over the hotel. Wilson may have disrupted the development. Was he a threat to profits? But is that worth killing for? 2. Old banking matters. Highland Bank, before the merger, might have been involved in financial schemes. Did Wilson know something? Maybe. But he wasn't an informant. He didn't go public. 3. Personal matter. Betrayal? Revenge? Past relationships? But Alistair had a spotless reputation. No hint of a double life. Time, the main suspect. Why did the murder happen that day? Why was Alistair suddenly thinking of returning to work? Why was the envelope empty? Why does the name Patterson mean nothing? It's as if time broke, and in one moment, Alistair's entire world fell into a void. If there was a motive, it vanished. If someone wanted to scare, they vanished with the bullet. "I don't believe he knew nothing," Joe later said. "He just didn't have time to tell me." Part 5. Cold Shadow. The case, shrouded in fog from the start, was officially closed in 2005. No leads found. No motive established. No weapon. The killer gone. Done. Over. But 16 years later, something shifted. Like in old Gothic novels, something returned from the dark. 2020. COVID. Lockdown. Panic. But in Scotland's police department, a sudden breakthrough. An old-school detective, Gary Winter, rereads the case. Just because. Without hope. And stumbles on a line that previously went unnoticed. In 2004, Havelock House Hotel planned to build a terrace. Someone in town was against it. Someone very much so. The hotel and the ghost of change. In 2004, Havelock House planned an expansion. On the blueprints, a new terrace right across from Alistair Wilson's windows. According to local sources, Alistair was vehemently opposed. He wrote complaints, spoke to the owner, and just a day before the murder, raised the issue again. Everyone thought it's just a neighborly dispute, nothing more. But maybe nothing more became final. A sudden name, Patterson. In 2020, police uncover new testimony. An anonymous source says Patterson was linked to the hotel's business. It was a nickname or code for one of the investors. Patterson, perhaps not a person, but a project, an operation, a front, real estate. And Alistair, maybe, poked his nose where it didn't belong. Details missed in 2004. Police officially admit for the first time that the envelope was part of a setup. It was meant to confuse Alistair, to give him a false sense of control, to buy time. Wilson was thrown off balance, sitting there, trying to make sense of Patterson. Meanwhile, the killer returned, ready. A possible suspect? In 2022, police finally report a new person of interest. A man who lived in the same town, linked to the developers, and died in 2020. His name, undisclosed. But police openly say, if you were alive, we'd have arrested him. Mind games. This crime doesn't feel like a spontaneous murder. On the contrary, every detail was calculated. The man comes twice. Not impulse. A plan. Wilson is lured out twice. The weapon, a silenced pistol. Professionalism. The moment at the door, perfect timing, when the victim is vulnerable. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was an execution. Like a mob hit. The hotel order theory. More investigators are leaning toward this. Wilson was inconvenient because he obstructed business. The mastermind wasn't a friend, not a jealous rival, but someone in a suit, with documents, and a ruler for blueprints. Maybe even someone who never met Wilson. For them, it was simple. Remove the problem. The word Patterson, a code. Internal. You know, Joe, it's just paranoia, Alistair said the day before. The hotel isn't powerful enough to pull something like this. Maybe he was wrong. Part 6. A voice from the past. He was upright. Too upright. And that was his problem. These words come from Mary McGill, a former Bank of Scotland employee in Inverness. She worked with Alistair Wilson in the 1990s. She was the first to agree to comment, 18 years after his death. Mary, Alistair always seemed not pedantic, but like he was built from bricks, each in its place. Even his smile was proper, restrained. Never shouted, never argued. But when he didn't like something, he could bury you in paperwork. Completely. To the brim. And that's when you realized, he doesn't yell, he acts. A job where heroes go unnoticed. In the mid-90s, Wilson worked on green banking initiatives, eco-loans, small business support, digital transformation. Sounds dull? Not when you learn his reports were routinely blocked from above. And he spoke out against kickbacks, criticized opaque real estate schemes, insisted on internal audits. He was given a polite dismissal, and Wilson, per his letters, called it an ethical exile. We obtained 3 fragments of letters Wilson wrote to a colleague in 2002 to 2003. I don't know if we can keep this in the shadows. They're not afraid of the law because they write it. It's like I'm standing in a room with these people, watching them build their tower of paper and concrete, and something inside already stinks. All I can do is say no. But what's a word worth when your opponent isn't a person, but a structure? Fragment of a phone call, November 2004, 10 days before the murder. Hello? Yes, Mr. Wilson. This is David from the town council. We need to discuss your objection to the Havelock House expansion. Sorry, I've already sent a written response. We know, but there are questions. Can we meet? I'm busy. Goodbye. It's important. Then write. Everything must be documented. This recording was found by chance, preserved on a home answering machine cassette. Meet David Lamont, a figure who never appeared before. We conducted our own investigation. David Lamont worked at the town council in 2004, but resigned the following summer, right after Wilson's murder. Moved. Changed his name. Vanished. We tried to contact him. Phone's dead. Emails silent. He doesn't exist on social media. More than meets the eye, Patterson as a corporate entity. Perhaps Patterson isn't a person or project, but a firm, registered in the Cayman Islands. linked to developers planning a new hotel in Nairn, and dissolved from registries 2 weeks after the murder. We traced IP addresses of one of Patterson Limited's mirror sites. They led to an office of a now-defunct consulting firm in Edinburgh. Final interview. We knew something was wrong. Voice of Peter James, Wilson's neighbor. That day, he looked tired. We were walking down the street, and he said to me, "You know, Peter, I'm not changing anything anymore. They'll do it their way." I asked, "Who's they?" Alistair looked at me and quietly said, "The ones behind the door, Peter. Always behind the door." Summary. Wilson wasn't clashing with a neighbor, but with shadowy structures. Patterson is a key. To what? We don't yet know. All involved have either vanished or gone silent. Police acknowledged the murder bore signs of a contract hit. And the scariest part, maybe none of us will ever learn the truth. Because the truth doesn't lie on the surface. It stands quietly, behind the door. Part 7. Geography of Fear. Connection map. Who's a friend? Who's a grave? This partisan anatomy of a conspiracy will trace every thread like clots in a vein, and some vanish right under your fingers. 1. Alistair Wilson, the core. Location, Nairn, Scotland. Occupation, former Bank of Scotland manager. Period, until 2002, internal banking projects. After, working from home, consulting, papers in a drawer. Known contacts, James K. Eco-finance advisor, Edinburgh, vanished in 2006. Patterson Limited, a mysterious firm that existed. David Lamont, town council liaison, vanished. Cynthia N. Legal consultant, died of a stroke a week before questioning. Yes, like in a movie, but documented. 2. Patterson Ltd, a ghost in the financial world. Registered, Cayman Islands. Operated, 2003 to 2004. Scottish branch, temporary office in an old Glasgow warehouse. Director, none listed, name in registry, J. Smith. Of course, Smith, because Mr. Obvious was taken. Connections to Wilson. He publicly criticized unclear development with opaque budgets. When asked by a journalist, he said, "Patterson, it's not people, it's a system wearing a face." 3. Nairn Development Group. Official goal, hotel construction on the coast. Unofficial, money laundering through a chain of tenders. Investors, Canadian companies with addresses that turned out to be mailboxes at gas stations. 1 signatory, H.D. Talone, lawyer, vanished in Bruges in 2005. 4. Hotel project, on paper, luxury, in reality, dense night. Planned, a 90-room hotel. Actual documentation, redevelopment with double funding. 1 project, via the Scottish Reconstruction Fund. Another, via Patterson Ltd. Where did the money go? Per official documents, used for soil analysis. Seriously, £10 million for soil. The great silent one, David Lamont. He was just a clerk, they say. But here's the kicker. His personal signature appears in the land transfer registry. And the same signature is on an official contract with Patterson Limited. Lamont was a key, and he's gone. Fragment of document number 3, published here for the first time. Internal memo. Date, March 11, 2004. Patterson Limited. Note: any delay from local activists or officials must be resolved appropriately. W. Wilson is listed in schedule number 4. Contact DL. DL. David Lamont. A puzzle that's no coincidence. Wilson learns his name is on a list. Meets an unknown man asking for Patterson. 20 minutes later, murdered at his doorstep. Voice of Lisa Wilson. I saw that man. He didn't look angry. He looked like someone just doing a job. Why this matters? Because Patterson isn't just an enigmatic envelope. It's a tool of influence, a pretext, a mark. And when Wilson received that envelope, he was already doomed. Theory, not a spontaneous murder, but a contract cleanup. Wilson wouldn't open the door to a stranger. He was expecting someone. His wife heard the conversation quiet but tense. After returning, he didn't fully dress. So, he thought, this won't take long. Then 2 shots, head and torso. A typical signature of a hired hit. Emotional summary. This is no longer just an unsolved murder. It's a knot where the following converge. Money, politics, development, fear, silence. Alistair Wilson was not a random victim. He was a reminder. What happens to those who say no in a world where everyone whispers yes? Part 8. Shadow on the Shore. Reconstruction of the night. Let's travel back to Sunday, November 28th, 2004. This is a chronicle of Alistair Wilson's final 40 minutes. From the doorbell to 3 shots that cast a shadow over the entire region. We'll reconstruct step by step. No speculation, no filters. 7 p.m., an ordinary Sunday. In the Wilson house, a calm family scene. Lisa Wilson is putting the kids to bed. Alistair is reading on a tablet, working on notes. Weather: damp, 7 degrees Celsius, light rain, sea mist. Neighbors' testimony: lights were on in every room. A typical weekend evening for them. 7:15 p.m., doorbell. Lisa approaches first, sees a man, about 35 to 45, in a dark coat and cap. He says, "I'm looking for Alistair Wilson." Alistair comes down, a brief conversation. Calm, reserved. Wilson goes upstairs and tells his wife. He wants to talk about Patterson, then takes an envelope labeled Patterson. No money inside. Nothing. Just a sheet, maybe blank. 7:25 p.m., second exit. Alistair goes to the door again. Steps out. Lisa is upstairs with the kids. 30 seconds later, 3 shots. 2 to the head. 1 to the torso. Weapon used: a Walther PPK .25 caliber. Very rare in the UK. Popular with smugglers and, oddly, James Bond. 7:27 p.m., chaos. Lisa hears explosions. Runs to the door. Her husband lies in the hallway. On his back, eyes open. Blood pools on the wooden floor. She screams. The kids, terrified. Ambulance call. "My husband's been shot. He's not breathing. Help." Police arrive in 8 minutes. The killer, long gone. Where did the killer go? Possible routes: straight through the park, to the shoreline. Fewer people. To the hotel, where construction was stalled. Through alleys to a car parked around the corner. One witness saw a dark silhouette running, but the description, vague. Boat scenario. The shore, 300 meters away. Some suggest the killer escaped by boat. Note: that night, an unregistered vessel was recorded in the bay, entered at 6:49 p.m., left at 7:40 p.m. Foggy night, coastal monitoring only noted an anomaly. Criminal profile. Based on number of shots, weapon, behavior, timing, likely profile. Age, 35 to 50. Professional firearms training. Cold, emotionless. Didn't intimidate, just executed. This wasn't a robbery, not a fit of rage. This was an execution. The Patterson envelope. We return to the crime's central symbol. The envelope, like a warning letter. Why did Wilson mention that name? Why that name up before his death? Likely. He was shown a paper with that word. Maybe the envelope held a blank sheet, a hint. You signed your own sentence. Patterson equals a symbol, cipher, code for, you know what this is for. Details for the keenest. Another envelope with a Patterson Limited logo was found in the house. In a drawer, under children's toys. Contents: an unsigned contract for a share in the development. This document fueled our next theory. Wilson had compromising material and was torn about turning it over. Summary: that night was like a slow-motion gunshot in a movie. Not the sound of a bullet, but the echo of a conspiracy. Instead of an explosion, silence. And the one who came vanished into the shadows. The killer didn't come to argue or intimidate. He came to erase a man, and did it in 40 seconds. Part 9. Tracks that aren't there. Initial police response. Police arrived 8 minutes after the call. Within 20 minutes, the street was cordoned off. But no description of a suspect. No surveillance footage. No DNA samples. No traces at all. Not a figure of speech. Literally, no traces. Crime scene. Sterile. No fingerprints on the door. On the handle, only Wilson's prints. No foreign shoe prints in the hallway or yard. Expert hypothesis. The killer wore shoe covers or specialized footwear. Possibly used anti-trace salts. Didn't touch any surface with bare skin. No gloves found. No fibers. No saliva. Nothing. Investigation, 2004 to 2005. In December 2004, over 160 people questioned. All hotels, taxis, bars, and cameras checked. Results? No suspects. No cameras caught anyone matching. Then it got weirder. Case closed, but not really. In 2005, the case was quietly shelved. Police stated, "We're not ruling out any theories. But for now, no evidence." But some detectives anonymously said otherwise. "We were told not to pursue the business angle. Documents we submitted disappeared. People in suits came, no badges, and worked with the materials. This isn't just odd. It's a concrete wall of secrecy. Loss of evidence." By 2010, some audio from interrogations gone. The Patterson envelope lost from the archive. 2 witnesses who gave statements recanted, saying they misremembered. One was a security guard at the hotel construction site. "I probably saw the wrong person. My vision was bad." He was transferred to another town 2 weeks later. Cover up? Was this an attempt to hide something bigger? 3 suspicious facts. 1. Mystery construction. Ballerina, hotel, reconstruction from 2003 to 2005. Patterson Limited mentioned as a contractor with a shady reputation. The company vanished from registries in 2006. Its executives, either dead or abroad. 2. Financial trail. Large sums appeared in Wilson's accounts 3 months before his death. Purpose: consulting services. Sender: a company registered in the Virgin Islands. 3. Insider police actions. One officer, first on the scene, resigned the next week. A year later, working for a firm tied to the construction. In 2012, linked to another case with lost evidence. 2020, case reopened. 16 years later, Scotland police reopened the case. The new lead investigator stated, "We have new evidence. We're almost certain the killer was local." This was the first time police publicly suggested Alistair was targeted. The motive was local but tied to money and pressure. Details for the pickiest. In November 2020, police found an anonymous note left in a local bar's mailbox. He was taken out for refusing. He said no. He was set to derail the project. Someone couldn't allow that. No prints on the paper, fading ink. Handwriting: left-handed, nervous tremor. Conclusion: the real crime isn't in the 3 shots. It's in what followed, everything vanishing. Like after a wave, smooth water. No ripples, no names, no faces. In this case, you can't even see the darkness. Just emptiness. Part 10. The name on the wall. Surname number 1, Croner. Michael Croner, Edinburgh lawyer, tied to Larchwood Project, 1999. Illegal expansion in a historic zone. 2001. Suspended for conflict of interest. A year later, working for Patterson Limited. Yes, that Patterson, the one building the Ballerina Hotel where Alistair stopped. Now pay attention. In a 2004 internal report draft, mention, Croner approved document processing for case WL AV13. WL AV13, Alistair Wilson's case code. This document was never officially registered. Surname number 2, McPhee. Thomas McPhee, private consultant in urban infrastructure. Worked with major developers. Not a public figure. His name didn't appear in any report. Except one. File dev_project_dorn 2003_F the doc. Recovered from a Patterson office disk in 2020. Page 9 phrase. In case of delay in approval from Wilson, McPhee is to deliver the package directly to text erased or encrypted afterward. Questions. What was this package? Why was McPhee to deliver it directly? And where did McPhee go? Last seen in Barcelona, 2013. No activity since. Surname number 3, Barrow. Suzanne Barrow, accountant, hired specialist for Patterson Limited in 2002 to 2004. Per unofficial sources, she had direct access to company operating accounts, data on payments to external consultants, and, crucially, special expenses. What are special expenses? Payments without standard purposes. Amounts, from £5,000 to £80,000. Dates, every 5 to 6 weeks. Recipient, WCons. In Barrow's draft reports, A. Wilson is mentioned, with a note, refused, risk increasing. 2 weeks after the last payment, Alistair was killed. Coincidence or pattern? Look, All three worked with Patterson Limited. All three appear in unofficial, internal documents. All three stopped being public figures after 2005. And more. All three vanished from LinkedIn within 1 week in 2015. So, a lawyer, a gray cardinal in infrastructure, an accountant who knew too much. The shadow project? In 2021, police obtained a 2004 internal letter, signed with initials MK. Part of the Hudson papers leaked to journalists. Quote, Wilson won't engage. Plan B will be activated after the 10th. Fear resurfaced, like in '99. They won't go for it again. He needs to be closed. Permanently. Letter date, November 26, 2004. Alistair was shot on November 28th. Additional context. In 1999, a major waterfront redevelopment in Nairn fell through, leading the opposition, a young banker, Alistair Wilson. After that, Patterson Limited shifted to backdoor schemes via subsidiaries. In 2004, they returned, and Wilson became inconvenient again. But this time, he didn't stop. And this time, they stopped him. Where are they now? Kroner, likely in Switzerland. McPhee, vanished. Last card activity in Barcelona. Barrow, unidentified since 2016. No tax records. None were officially questioned. None of these threads made it to the public investigation. Conclusion. They knew they wouldn't be seen. Because documents vanish, data gets erased, people dissolve. The name on the wall isn't one. It's a fresco, crafted by people who worked in the shadows and now live in the dark. Part 11. The bank that doesn't exist. The North Star Consortium. Setting, Inverness, Scotland. 2002. A new financial entity appears in registries. North Star Infrastructure Finance Limited. Its narrow purpose: financing infrastructure initiatives in Highland Council District. Address: 16 Banavie Close, Inverness. Google it. Pointless. It's an auto shop and an empty garage. Director: Edward Knight, former Glasgow banker. Fun fact: in 1998, he lost his banking license for loan manipulations, offshore ties, systematic audit evasion. But surprise, in 2002, he's back, via construction. North Star becomes a key investor in Patterson Limited, McLean Development, Ireland. W. Cons, the same firm receiving Suzanne Barrow's special payments. Paper Empire. In 2003, North Star establishes North Star Capital Holdings, Jersey. Through this offshore entity, £6.2 million for Patterson, £1.8 million for environmental assessment of the Dorn project, and £900,000 cash. These funds appear in a Vienna bank, Mearsham Invest, servicing. Client hashtag 44/7/AV, Alistair Wilson. Yes, Alistair had a private account in a foreign bank. This wasn't public until now. Source: Hudson Papers, leak, page 83. Statement shows 2 transactions of £450,000. Date: October 2004. Purpose: per contract WL, AV13. And let's rewind. This is the same case number mentioned in Patterson's file. Will, AV13, what was it? Likely a contract between Patterson and Wilson that wasn't officially approved. May have involved silent consent for the hotel development. Included a clause about response delays from Wilson's bank. Was it a bribe? Payment for a change of stance? We don't know. But the fact is, in October 2004, Alistair received nearly £1 million. In November, he backed out of all deals. A week later, he was killed. North Star vanishes. In 2005, North Star abandons all UK assets, transfers remnants to Jersey's Elk Haven Solutions, Caymans, closes for insolvency, and no trace in banking registries. No mention in Patterson's financials. But in Barrow's drafts, there's an entry, REF, NSDR.442_13B, with £1.6 million written off under off dormant conv. What this abbreviation means, no one knows for sure. Maybe offshore conversion of dormant account. 3 locks, 3 keys. At this stage, we see 3 independent threads that lead to Patterson Limited, touch shadowy financial flows, point to Wilson's conflict of interest in his final weeks. These are North Star payments, the Vienna account, Wilson's refusal to sign consent. Maybe Alistair took the money and regretted it. Or it was a setup to pin something on him. Either way, when silent consent failed, Plan B kicked in. Conclusion: kill a man, that's a crime. But kill his reputation, use him as a front, that's art. The bank that doesn't exist isn't just a building. It's a system, a financial structure created solely to push one deal and vanish. And the scariest part, there were likely several such banks in this case. Part 12, the third man at the door. Until now, the official version was simple. One man approaches the Wilsons' door, asks for Alistair. Minutes later, Alistair returns. He's shot in the head 3 times. The attacker vanishes. But, as we've guessed, the official version is always too convenient, because at least 4 testimonies challenge it. Super neighbor number 1, Mr. Holliday. Mr. Harold Holliday, 71, lives 2 houses from the Wilsons. On the evening of November 28, 2004, he went out to take out the trash. Says he saw a man in a dark jacket approach the door. But then, someone else was moving down the street behind him. They were close. I thought maybe friends. But the second one just vanished. Just vanished. Now, pay attention. Holliday was never questioned by police. He approached a private detective in 2010 himself. Neighbor number 2, Penny Brooks. Ms. Brooks lived upstairs across the street. That evening, she was walking her dog and saw 2 stood at the door. One closer, the other a bit off to the side. Then the door slammed. I heard 3 shots. A pause. Then footsteps. Fast. And silence. This description completely contradicts the official line of a lone gunman. Co-op camera. Here's an almost biblical moment. There was a camera, but the footage deleted. Yes, a co-op grocery store across from the hotel had cameras covering the street. They captured 7:19 p.m., a man in dark clothing walking toward the hotel. 7:22 p.m., 2 passed the same house, one quickly, one slower. 7:25 p.m., 1 returns. And the juiciest part, in December 2004, police claimed the video showed nothing. In January 2005, the store manager said the footage was taken and never returned. Photo from police file #8131/24/B. In 2016, journalist Bobby McGilvray obtained a copy of a photo from the operational file. It shows light in front of the house, footprints in 2 directions, separate shoe prints matching neither Alistair's nor Suzanne's shoes. Expert conclusion: one set military-style soles, another dress shoes or loafers. These 2 were at the door less than a minute before the shots. As American housewives might say, what the hell? Why was this hushed up? Because 2 people isn't a lone killer, it's an operation. In a scenario where someone needs silence, 2 operatives. One distracts, the other shoots. Both vanish in different directions. This is a standard tactic used in special services or staged killings to leave no witnesses. And here, suddenly no one saw anything else. The third man, who's the second? The irony, the third man, is the one the official version doesn't acknowledge exists. But he appears on video, shows up in witness statements. Could be the real killer or a lookout covering the other. Maybe one was the bait, the other the shooter. Or one killed, and the other ensured the victim didn't survive. One more detail. Wilson's body had 3 shots, but only one was instantly fatal. This isn't a professional job, but something nervous with a hint of panic. A hired killer would have shot once in the head and vanished. 3 shots, either a message or amateurishness. But the presence of a second person, fear or control. In some, we're almost certain. That evening, it wasn't 2 at the doorstep, but 3. Alistair, the man in dark clothing known, and his shadow companion, leaving only footsteps, silhouettes, and silence. The truth isn't just in the details. It's between the lines of police reports and in what they deliberately didn't write. Part 13. Why didn't they call an ambulance? Hello? Ambulance, please. A man's just been killed. Those words, never spoken. Chronology of inaction. Here's the clear timeline. 7:24 p.m. Alistair Wilson takes 3 bullets to the head. 7:25 p.m. His wife, Suzanne, finds the body on the steps. 7:26. 7:27, 7:30. No one calls an ambulance. Instead, 7:32 p.m., a call to the police. Not the ambulance. The police. Operator asks, "Is he still breathing?" Suzanne says, "I don't know." And it feels like either the person on the steps was already deemed not alive, though breathing could have been checked, or someone didn't want him to survive. Why this matters? Because in similar cases, when a victim shows signs of life, the first instinct is to call an ambulance, no matter the situation, especially if it's your husband, just shot 3 times in the head. But here, no reflex to call for help. That's strange. Incredibly strange. Physiology. Was he still alive? Yes. A 2005 forensic expert confirmed. Shockwaves from the bullets caused massive brain damage, but death wasn't instant. He could have potentially been resuscitated in the first 3 minutes. 3 minutes. More than enough to dial 999, even with trembling hands. Suzanne, emotional shock or cold logic. In her official statement, Suzanne claimed, "I was screaming. I didn't know what to do. I was running around the house." Sounds like shock. But at the same time, she found the phone, made a call, reported the shooting, spoke with the police operator. So, composed enough to act, but not enough to call an ambulance. If it was a random passerby, she'd have called. But this was her husband, and that makes it even creepier. UK call protocol. In the UK, the number is 999. From there, they direct you, ambulance, fire, police, Coast Guard, even mental health support if needed. But Suzanne specifically asked for police. Not, "Help, my husband's injured." But come, someone shot my husband. That says something too. The focus was on the crime, not the life. Alive wasn't useful to them? This is a harsh assumption. But if Alistair was indeed involved in something dangerous and had information he wasn't supposed to share, then alive, he was a threat. Calling an ambulance, there's a chance he survives. And says something about a name, a motive, the killer. But delay the call and the chances become 0. What if they had called? Experts reconstructed the scenario. An ambulance in that area could have arrived in 4 to 5 minutes. If called at 7:25 p.m., paramedics would have been there by 7:30. They could have stabilized his breathing, maybe even gotten him to the hospital conscious. And we might have gotten at least 2 sentences from him. Maybe even the killer's name. But no, we got 3 bullets in silence. A very cold evening. By the way, it was -3 degrees Celsius outside. Blood coagulates quickly. This slows death from blood loss, meaning Alistair lived longer than assumed. And now, the scariest part. One paramedic, arriving on the police's call, noted in a confidential report. The body was still warm. We checked breathing. It was there very recently. Attempt at a conclusion. So, the wife doesn't call an ambulance, though she could. The husband is still breathing, though officially already dead. Police are called 8 minutes later. No neighbor calls, though they heard shots. Even when the body is found, no one checks the pulse right away. Can we call this human shock? Sure. Or deliberate indifference. There's such a thing as a murder plan with no chance of survival. And it works not just with bullets, but with the prolonged wait for help that never comes. Part 14. Shadows after death. What did the survivors hide? Even dead, he was safer than alive. Death, just the beginning. Usually, after such a high-profile murder, a storm erupts. Media, police, investigations, neighbors clamoring they saw something, friends in shock, employers offering condolences. But here, silence. A suffocating, enveloping silence. It feels like everyone is relieved he's dead. And worse, some seem to expect it. Suzanne, voice from the wall. After the initial shock, Suzanne vanishes from the media's view. She refuses interviews, won't speak to police beyond the bare minimum. A lawyer, by her side. The press, behind closed doors. Journalists question, did Alistair have enemies? Suzanne, no, absolutely not. He was a good man. Good? He was just killed with 3 shots to the head. That doesn't look like a crime against an upright citizen. The house, spotless. Police search the house, expecting laptops, documents, notes, evidence. They find nothing. All surfaces pristinely clean. Laptop, recently wiped, no data. Flash drives, missing. Papers, minimal. A sudden crime, you say? Then why does it look like the house was prepped for a deep clean? His work, also fog. Alistair Wilson worked at HBOS, in a department handling loans to large companies. But the last 3 months, he was on a strange internal transfer. Words from an anonymous colleague. Not a promotion. Not a firing. A dry out. When they isolate you without explanation. Some say he was preparing to testify against senior management, and even had a folder of documents. A folder no one ever found. The mysterious brown card. Let's recall, when the stranger knocked, he asked for Alistair, or maybe a list of Wilson, or Mr. Wilson, but definitely left a brown card labeled Paul. Sadly, this card vanished. No one saw it. Police claim it never existed, but Susan definitely held it in her hands. A physical piece of evidence, gone without a trace. Again, neighbors hear but don't see. All neighbors say they saw nothing, but 3 shots at close range aren't firecrackers. It's a sharp, metallic roar that cuts through windows and evening silence. Yet none of them looked out, stepped outside, called the police, as if the entire neighborhood ceased to exist for a moment. The interior keeps quiet. The furniture in Alistair's house was new, very new, recently replaced. We didn't understand why, but all the old furniture vanished days before the murder. Testimony from a realtor. Why? Because the old wardrobe had a safe. The old sofa had a false bottom. Likely, something was stored there. But everything, destroyed, discarded, replaced. In a house not for sale. In a family not moving. In a man not planning to die. The puzzle takes shape. Step by step. Everyone's silent. Documents vanish. Papers destroyed. Furniture replaced. The body not saved. Evidence dissolves into thin air. This doesn't look like a tragedy. It looks like a professional cleanup. Conclusion. Alistair Wilson may not have been just a banker. Maybe he was a key to something big, dangerous. Maybe he was about to speak, and that's why he died. But scarier still, maybe those who were supposed to love him knew he would die and did nothing. Part 15. Police in the dark. How much did they know, and how much did they hide? Sometimes the police see nothing, and sometimes they don't want to see. First minutes after the murder, ambulance and police arrive within 10 minutes of Suzanne's call. Yet, the killer vanishes without a trace. No surveillance cameras, though a bank is nearby. No DNA, fingerprints, or left-behind items. Dog searches, fruitless. A murder in broad daylight. Well, 7 p.m., but still light. In a cozy town, and no neighbor saw a stranger walking to the house. Or back, after the shots. A disappearance worthy of a good spy thriller. Instead of a killer, fog. It feels like the police had no action plan, or no desire to dig deeper. We're considering all possibilities, including a domestic dispute. Official police comment 48 hours after the murder. Domestic? A man is killed at his doorstep with 3 shots to the head, and they're considering a gas bill dispute. Details that don't fit. Police kept many materials secret. Even a decade later, some files remained classified. What data could be dangerous to release after 10 years? What, or who, were they protecting? Journalists filed dozens of Freedom of Information requests, almost all denied. This case held more than just an unknown assailant in a cap. False steps and surprises. A year later, police publicly announce, "We no longer have active suspects." Yet no one was re-questioned. No one was put under protection. No sketches. No calls for witnesses. Alistair Wilson, killed at his home. And the case fades. Not just slowly investigated, but silenced. Tampered testimony? Years later, a local patrol officer confesses to journalists. "We were told not to mention certain details, like it was irrelevant." Plus, several witnesses claim. Police took their phones with photo evidence. Returned them, minus certain images. Wait, this isn't just negligence. This is active concealment. Prematurely closed case. In 2006, the case was officially marked inactive. Only in 2021 was it suddenly reopened. What changed? Information surfaced that Alistair was indeed collecting incriminating evidence on his bank's department, which funneled money to shell companies. These firms may have been tied to money laundering, corruption, maybe even organized crime. But this theory wasn't voiced then, and they didn't want to voice it now. Questions still awaiting answers. Who was Paul on the card? Why did all materials vanish from the house beforehand? Where did the killer's traces go, and did anyone even look? Why did the police stay silent for years? Why was the case inconvenient before a motive even emerged? Reflection. The deeper we go, the clearer it becomes. This isn't just a murder. It's an informational crime. A crime not just against a body, but against truth. It was killed alongside Alistair and buried under layers of official statements, witness silence, and the shine of police badges that don't want to see the truth. Part 16. Tracks that lead deeper. The banker conspiracy theory. There are two types of bankers: those who count money and those who count bodies. At the core, the bank. Alistair Wilson worked in a major bank's division officially focused on small business development. In reality, this was where dozens of suspicious financial transactions passed through. 2001 to 2003, a period of active asset redistribution in Scotland. Banks were issuing loans to shell companies, registering businesses that existed only on paper, and, most intriguingly, massively investing in projects with no history, no profits, but with cover from above. What did Alistair find? Per an anonymous colleague, he found linked transactions, money bouncing back and forth between firms at the same address, or that didn't exist at all. He started keeping separate records, not on the bank's computer, by hand. A notebook. Yes, just a notebook. In it, dates, amounts, company names, schemes. A week before the murder, the notebook vanished, evaporated, and no one, absolutely no one, mentioned it in the police report. The conversation that changed everything. Alistair wanted to leave the bank, but first he set up a meeting. Not official, not through the bank, through a priest. Yes, a friend of Wilson's, a local church father, later admitted Alistair. Asked him to connect with a journalist or human rights advocate. It was meant to be a whistleblow, but it didn't get the chance. The meeting was scheduled for Monday. Wilson was killed on Sunday. Shadows over finance. A 2022 investigation revealed some firms tied to Wilson's bank later appeared in global leaks, Panama Papers, and Paradise Files. Their directors were nominal, literally random people from Indonesia, Belarus, Cyprus. Transaction amounts from $500,000 to $3.4 million per deal. And all this in a modest bank handling small business in northern Scotland? You kidding? Warning or revenge? The theory that Wilson was eliminated because he was about to expose a corrupt financial scheme is not just plausible, it's the only one that explains the events. Why was he called to the door? Why the card with Paul? Why did the killer look like a mercenary, not a psychopath? Why no robbery? Because this wasn't an emotional crime. It was an operation. And that card, not a signature, but maybe a password. A code to confirm the target. Why did everyone stay silent? The bank said nothing. No condolences, no internal investigation. Colleagues silent for years. Some suddenly moved. A month after the murder, the bank sold several branches, including Wilson's. A sudden corporate upgrade? Or wiping the slate clean? Conclusion. Who benefited? Alistair Wilson. Started digging into unexplainable transactions. Realized the firms were interconnected. Wanted to leave the system and expose it. He was killed on the eve of that attempt. While we don't have names, we have a motive. And a motive is the most reliable compass in an investigation. Sometimes the answer isn't who shot, but who ordered the shot. Part 17. Web of Silence. Who feared Alistair Wilson and why? Once it became clear, Alistair Wilson wasn't just a victim, but a key figure in a scandalous web. Strange things started happening. Not just silence, but a thick, suffocating web of silence enveloping everything. Let's be clear, this wasn't a simple criminal case with a clear mastermind and executor. Here, shadows operated. People in offices who preferred to ignore the obvious. People who lost jobs, hid from journalists, feared testifying. And not just feared, they were made to understand. Keep your mouth shut. Let's break down the key points of this silence. First, several employees close to Wilson suddenly quit. Reasons? Personal circumstances, professional burnout. These sound like lines from a cheap thriller, but behind them were real threats. Not just verbal, but tangible. anonymous calls, surveillance, hints of legal trouble. Such tactics scared even the boldest. Second, strange police failures emerged. Some evidence was lost. Witnesses quietly recanted. Though officially everything was under control, it's clear someone was pulling strings behind the scenes. Most crucially, a group of people around Wilson who seemed to know more than they said. His colleagues, managers, even close friends, acted as if they feared discussing it aloud. The company's atmosphere reeked of fear and distrust. Why? Simple. The truth about Alistair was too dangerous for everyone. Maybe he knew something that could disrupt business or expose crimes. Maybe his murder wasn't just personal, but backed by a system built on lies and intimidation. This web of silence is a key reason the investigation hit a dead end. Everyone who could shed light either vanished or lost their voice. Part 18. Theories that remain. Conclusions. A murder without a murderer. We're nearing the end of this story, a point where all threads are gathered, but the picture remains blurry, like in fog. First, the conspiracy theory. It revolves around corporate intrigue and power struggles. Alistair may have been too curious, perhaps getting close to something meant to stay hidden. In this version, the murder wasn't a crime of passion, but a cold operation to eliminate an inconvenient witness. But hard evidence? Scarce. Second, revenge. In the business world, grudges aren't forgotten, and blood has long been currency. Friends turn into enemies, enemies into something worse. But who and why? Here, speculation begins, as real testimony is painfully lacking. Third, investigative error. Maybe it all went wrong due to simple mistakes, mishandled evidence, false testimony, political pressure. This version is no less grim. It suggests the truth was close but overlooked. The big question, is there even a murderer? Was this a murder, not a mistake, or a disguised tragedy? For now, these are just guesses. But one thing's certain, this case mirrors the dark sides of human nature: fear, betrayal, lust for power. Finale, the left-behind secret. And here, after all the twists, intrigues, and webs of silence, we stand before a mystery that may never have a simple answer. Alistair Wilson's murder isn't just a case in the crime logs. It's a mirror of our world, where truth often hides beneath layers of lies, fear, and indifference. Some might say, there's no truth, just versions. And that's the worst, yet most honest answer. Because sometimes the greatest truth is that we'll never know it. Alistair Wilson stepped into the darkness, leaving more questions than answers. His story is a ghost, wandering through corridors of power and greed, reminding us there will always be those who want silence more than life. And in that silence lies the scariest answer, an answer not everyone is ready to hear. So, if you ever find yourself at a crossroads where truth meets shadow, remember, sometimes it's better to leave a mystery than to unravel it, because some things are better left unknown. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to catch more tangled, chilling, and truly unique criminal investigations. Plenty more cases ahead that will flip your view of truth. Thanks for staying with us. Stay tuned. The real mysteries are just beginning.